the disaster recovery planning life cycle has kind of been around for a while, and most people are familiar with this. It looks just like every other life cycle. It's got a wheel, and we kind of are able to go through a pretty normal series of activities, right? Where we want to analyze our requirements, we want to develop our requirements, then we want to implement the disaster recovery solution. What we usually miss is kind of the back half of this life cycle, which are things like awareness and training. How many of you actually do awareness and training for your end users on disaster recovery? I saw a couple hands go up. This is something that in a lot of cases we just kind of we don't get to because it's part of, we consider it an IT exercise. Well, if we have to recover from a disaster, we'll recover from a disaster. But as a user, do I know if there's an outage at headquarters, how's headquarters supposed to communicate with me if the primary communication method is email? Or if it's the voice over IP phone system, or if it's my mobile system that's accessed by the VoIP system. So there's a number of kind of codependencies that are in there that we really need to put a bigger focus on training our end users on, not just the business owners, but the actual end users on how to actually work with IT in the event of a disaster or in the event of a contingency scenario. We look at exercise and maintenance. Disaster recovery exercises are not something that most organizations look forward to. I've had the opportunity to participate in a few of these, and generally they're not a lot of fun, and there's an enormous amount of perceived risk that's generally associated with them. The concept of shutting off your production system so you can see if your DR system works isn't necessarily something that a lot of folks are really interested in. So what we're really talking about in this life cycle concept is being able to kind of plan those sorts of contingencies into the development of the entire solution or into the development of your disaster recovery strategy as you're planning it. And then the last piece here is the continual improvement piece, right? And really making this a continual process. And what we mean by that is the things that you see on the left, right? Ensuring that training is up to date and that people are continually trained on the latest new features and functions in the systems and how they're impacted in a disaster scenario. What kinds of things do your users need to be able to do during a disaster, and how can they respond and do that? We also want to make sure that we design the system in a way that we can perform those rigorous and full-scale exercises like we talked about. Bill's mention of active data centers is a common concept now. The ideal with that being that we should be able to run at 100% load at both of those data centers and have that only be supporting, or at 50% load at both of those data centers and be supporting 100% of the business in doing that. That makes things like testing these exercises and running these exercises much more possible. And then lastly, we want to really be able to make sure that we iteratively integrate a lot of that feedback from the business in terms of understanding how their needs are changing, how their service needs are changing. Do they have new organizations that are dependent on parts of your infrastructure that you didn't realize they were before? How many of you, for a number of the systems that you have disaster recovery plans for, have the disaster recovery runbook? That's the big, these are the 900 pages of things that you need to do to bring this system back to recovery. That's a really, really arduous process to have to go through. And the reality is, you may not have the people that you need to actually implement that plan when you need to implement it. So it always has to be written in a way that almost anybody off the street would be able to come in and bring your system back up. The challenge is, as soon as you write that document, it's already out of date, right? There's changes in the infrastructure, there's changes to the applications, and there's changes to the way that things run that cause you to have to change that document again. But we don't really change the document that often. So the new concept is really automating a lot of these different things, having your configuration guide or your runbook guide being something that's maybe populated electronically out of a CMDB that's live, right? And having a lot of these processes automated. So if you need to switch all of your DNS from a primary site to a secondary site, being able to hit a button and let the button do it instead of relying on a person to go to your DR site and actually bring it up and make it run. So that concept of enabling automation and configuration management and allowing that to tie directly into your DR runbook and into your DR processes and automate a number of those things is really core and critical to this concept of continuous availability.